Welcome to Ekate's Crossing as we continue with the 10th Insight. We're up to the last chapter, Holding the Vision, and this is part 2. And let's see, what card are we going to look at? Ooh, what's pulled out here? The Journeyer. So we're looking at the journey that's going on within ourselves. I think that's very important here, to look at the journey that's going in within ourselves. And the card is nurture, spirit of nurture. So it's really about nurturing ourselves. So we are the journeyer. So what's happening within ourselves is really important through this journey. Okay, what's happening within ourselves. And we're looking at the spirit of nurture. So let's have a look at the nurturing. And it's interesting, again, the spirit cards are coming up here. I am the spirit of nurture. I offer protection and a safe, homely place where you may find refuge and access new energy at times of crisis. In me you will find support and encouragement that restore your well-being and enable you to move ahead in your life's journey. The substance I offer will fortify you and help you to face whatever lies ahead with renewed vigor. That's an interesting card for this chapter that we're reading at the moment. The spirit of nurture. Nurture provides balm, rest, and peace for your soul. Whatever difficulty, loss, or pain you encounter, through nurture you will find a sanctuary of warmth, solace, and support. Home and family are time-honoured sources of such nourishment, which may be physically at hand or experienced as a spiritual reality, even when we are alone or far away. The spirit of nurture, depicted here as a spirit house, offers a refuge in times of adversity. Here you may recover your strength and gather your thoughts as you prepare to continue on your path. The oasis of peace and love is always available to you. So as we're working through the insights and everything, it is a lot about meditation, reflection, contemplation, being able to visualize and to raise your vibration to bring that sense of nurture within yourself. You're nurturing your soul in many ways. So let's have a look at the Primordial Tarot and see what cards come out today for reflection. Okay, we've got 7 of Jewels, which seems really important here. 7 of Jewels, oops, and the Source. Okay, so let's have a look and see what these cards are about here. I want to sort of get into a little bit more detail as we look at the 7 of Jewels. Okay, 7 of Jewels, which is the era of Jewels, talks about a sense of practices from the past. Seems to stand out for me here. It's all about that connection, that practice, what comes from the past, people of the past, balancing your past and present. Oh, that's interesting within regards to the 10th Insight. Really interesting. It's about getting to the source of what's going on here. So here we have this sense of the source, healing and renewal. What an interesting card. As we look at the journey that's going on, that nurturing of ourselves, within ourselves, finding that sense of sacredness, and it does come from the past here, which is interesting here, connecting to the past, being able to have that sense of cleansing, renewal within ourselves. So when we connect to the past, we do have that sense of cleansing away, acknowledging, healing, processing it through. Oh, what an interesting card to think about as we continue this journey of the 10th Insight, holding the vision. So let us continue here. 20 minutes later, we were standing on the hill above the falls. The owl had followed, calling out periodically, and had stationed itself 50 feet to our right. In front of us, the pool glistened in the moonlight, muted only by wisps of fog that drifted along its surface. We waited for 10 or 15 minutes without speaking. "Look there," David said, pointing. Among the rocks to the right of the pool, I could make out several figures. One of them looked up and saw us. It was Charlene. I waved, and she recognized me. Then David and I made our way down the rocky slope to where they were standing. Curtis was ecstatic at seeing David, grabbing his arm. "We'll stop these people now." For a moment they looked at each other in silence. Then Curtis introduced Maya and Charlene. I met eyes with Maya. "Did you have any trouble finding your way here?" "At first we were confused and lost in the darkness, but then I heard the owl and I knew." "The presence of an owl," David said, "means that we have the opportunity to see through any possible deception by others. And if we avoid the tendency to harm or lash out, we can, like the owl, cut through the darkness to hold a higher truth." Maya was watching David closely. "You look familiar," Maya said. "Who are you?" He looked at her questioningly. "You were told my name. It's David." She grabbed his hand gently. "No, I mean, who are you to me, to us?" "I was there," he said, "during the wars, but I was so full of hatred for the whites that I didn't support you. I didn't even listen to you." "We're doing it differently now," I said. David glared at me reflexively, then caught himself and softened as he had before. "Back in that war, I had even less respect for you than the others. You wouldn't take a stand. You ran away." "It was fear," I replied. "I know." For several more minutes, everyone talked with David about the emotions we were feeling. Excuse me. Discussing everything we could remember about the tragedy of the war on the Native Americans. David went on to explain that his soul group was made up of mediators, and that he had come this time to work through his anger at the European mentality, and then to work for the spiritual recognition of all indigenous cultures and the inclusion of all people. Charlene glanced at me, then turned to David. "You're the 5th member of this group, aren't you?" Before he could answer, we felt a vibration racing through the ground under our feet. It sent irregular ripples across the surface of the pool. Accompanying the tremor was another eerie, melodious whine that filled the forest. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw flashlights moving on the hill 50 feet above us. "They're here," Curtis whispered. I turned to see Feynman at the edge of an overhang directly above our heads. He was adjusting a small dish antenna on what looked like a portable computer. "They're going to focus on us to try to fine-tune the generator that way," Curtis said. "We've got to get out of here." Maya reached over and touched his arm. "No, please, Curtis. Maybe it will work this time." David moved closer to Curtis, then said lowly, "It can work." Curtis stared at him for a moment, then finally nodded his agreement, and we began to raise our energy again. As in the 2 previous attempts, I began to see higher self-expressions on every face, and then our soul groups appeared and merged into a circle around us, including for the first time the members of David's group. As the memory of the world vision returned, we were again pulled into the overall intent to transfer energy and knowledge and awareness into the physical dimension. Also, as before, we saw the fearful polarization occurring in our time and the panoramic vision of the positive future that would succeed at once the special groups formed and learnt how to intercede, how to hold the vision. Suddenly another tremor shook the ground violently. "Stay with the vision," Maya shouted. "Hold the image of how the future can be." I heard the fissure tear through the ground to my right, but I kept my concentration. In my mind, I again saw the world vision as a force of energy that was emanating outward from our group in all directions and pushing Feynman back away from us, defeating the energy of his fear vision. To my left, a huge tree ripped from its roots and crashed to the ground. "It's still not working," Curtis shouted, jumping to his feet. "No, wait," David said. He had been deep in thought, and now he reached out and grabbed Curtis, pulling him down beside him. "Don't you see what's wrong? We're treating Feynman and the others as if they're the enemies, trying to push them back. Doing that actually strengthens them, because they have something to fight against. Rather than fighting them with the vision, we have to include Shaman and the operatives in what we're visualizing. In reality, there are no enemies. We are all souls in growth, waking up. We have to project the world vision toward them as though they are just like us. I suddenly recalled seeing Shaman's birth vision. Now it all made perfect sense. The view of hell. Understanding the obsessive trance state that humans use to ward off fear. Seeing the ring of souls as they tried to intervene. And then observing Shaman's original intention. "He is one of us," I shouted. I know what he intended to do. In actuality, he came to break through his need for power. He wanted to prevent the destruction that could be caused by the generators and the other new technology. He saw himself meeting with us in the darkness. He's the sixth member of the group. Maya leaned forward. "This works just like in the process of healing. We have to image him remembering what he really is here to do." She glanced at me. "That helps break the fear block like the trance at every level." As we began to concentrate on including Shaman and his men, our energy leaped forward. The night began illuminated, and we could clearly see Shaman and two men on the hill. The soul group seemed to move more closely into focus, appearing more human-like, while at the same time we became more luminescent like them. From the left, more soul groups seemed to be joining. "It's Shaman's soul group," Charlene said, "and the soul groups of the two men with him." As the energy increased, the massive hologram of the world vision again encircled us. "Focus on Shaman and the others the way we focused on each other," Maya shouted. "Visualize that they remember." I turned slightly and faced the three men. Shaman was still working furiously at his computer. The other two men looking on. The hologram encircled them as well, especially the image of each person awakening at this historical moment to his or her true purpose. As we watched, the forest was cast in a perceptible field of swirling amber energy, which seemed to pass through Shaman and his associates. Simultaneously, I saw the same wisps of white light that had protected Curtis and Maya and me hovering over the men, and afterwards the white streaks of light grew in size and began to emanate outward in all directions, disappearing finally into the distance. After a few minutes, the ground tremors and strange sounds stopped. A breeze blew the last of the dust towards the south. One of the men stopped, watching Shaman, and eased away from us into the trees. For several seconds, Shaman continued to work on his keyboard, then gave up in frustration. He looked down at us and picked up the computer, cradling it gently with his left arm. With the other hand, he pulled out a handgun and began to walk our way. The other men armed with automatic weapon followed. "Don't let go of the image," Maya cautioned. When they were 20 feet away, Shaman set the computer down and punched at the keyboard again, keeping the pistol ready. Several large rocks loosened earlier broke free and crashed into the pool. "You didn't come here to do this," Charlene said softly. The rest of us focused on his face. The operative, keeping his weapon aimed at us, walked closer to Shaman and said, "We can't do anything else here. Let's go." Shaman waved them off, then began to type angrily again. "Nothing is working," Shaman yelled at us. "What are you doing?" He looked at the operative. "Shoot them!" he screamed. "Shoot them!" For an instant the man looked at us coldly. Then, shaking his head, he backed away and disappeared into the rocks. "You were born to prevent this destruction from happening," I said. He dropped the gun to his side and stared at me. For an instant his face lightened, appearing exactly as I'd seen it during his birth vision. I could tell he was remembering something. A second later, a look of fright swept across his face. Turning quickly into anger, he grimaced and held his stomach, then turned and reached onto the rocks beside him. Wiping his mouth, he raised the gun again. "I don't know what you're trying to do to me, but it won't work." He took several steps towards, then seemed to lose energy. The gun fell to the ground. "It doesn't matter, you know. There are other forests. You people can't be at all of them. I'm going to make this generator work. Do you understand? You're not taking this away from me." He stumbled backwards a few feet, then turned and ran into the darkness. When we reached the hill above the bunker, a great wave of relief swept through the group. After Feynman had left, we had cautiously made our way back to the site of the experiment, not knowing what we would find. Now, as we looked, the bunker area was aglow with dozens of truck lights. Most of the vehicles bore the insignia of the Forest Service. Although the FBI was represented along with the local sheriff's department, I crawled forward several more feet on the crest of the hill and looked closely to see if anyone was being interrogated or held in any of the cars. They all looked empty. The door of the bunker was open, and officers seemed to be going in and out as if investigating a crime scene. "They've all left," Curtis said, leaning forward on his knees and gazing past the trunk of the large tree. "We stopped them." Maya turned and sat down. "Well, at least we stopped them here. They won't try the experiment again in this valley." "But Feynman was right," David said, looking at the rest of us. "They can go to some other place and no one will know." He stood up. "I've got to go in there. I'll tell them the whole story." "Are you crazy?" Curtis said, walking up to him. "What if the government is part of this?" "The government is just people," David replied. "Not all of them are involved." Curtis stepped up closer. "There has to be another way. I'm not letting you go in there." "There will be someone in one of those agencies who will listen to us," David said. "I'm sure of it." Curtis was silent. Charlene was leaning on a rock several feet away and said, "He's right. Someone could be in there just the right position to help." Curtis shook his head, grappling with his thoughts. "That might be true, but you'll need someone with you who can accurately describe the technology." "That means you'll have to go too," David said. Curtis managed to return a smile. "Okay, I'll go with you, but only because we have an ace in the hole." "What?" David asked. "A guy that we left tied up back in the cave." David put a hand on his shoulder. "Come on, you can tell me about it on the way. Let's see what happens." After anxious goodbyes to the rest of us, they moved away to the right to approach the bunker site from another direction. Suddenly Maya whispered loudly for them to wait. "I'm going too," she said. "I'm a physician. People know in the area. You might need a third witness." The three of them looked at Charlene and me, obviously wondering if we might join them as well. "Not me," Charlene said. "I think I'm needed elsewhere." I'm also declined and asked them not to mention us. They agreed and then walked away towards the lights. Left alone, Charlene and I met eyes. I recalled the deep feeling I had experienced towards her in the other dimension. She was taking a step towards me, about to speak, when both of us detected a flashlight 50 yards to our right. Carefully we moved deeper into the trees. The light changed position and headed right towards us. We kept still and low to the ground. As the light approached, I began to hear a lone voice, someone apparently talking to himself. I knew this person. It was Joel. I caught Charlene's eye. "I know who it is," I whispered. "I think we should talk to him." She nodded. When he was 20 feet away, I called out his name. He stopped and aimed his light towards us. Recognizing me immediately, he walked over and crouched down where we were. "What are you doing out here?" I asked. "There's not much left back there," he replied, pointing towards the bunker. "There's an underground laboratory over there that has been completely cleaned out, and I thought I would try to go to the falls. But when I got out there in the dark, I changed my mind." "I thought you were leaving the area," I said. "You were so skeptical." "I know I was going to leave, but I had a dream that disturbed me. I thought I'd better stay and try to help. The service people thought I was crazy, but then I ran into a deputy from the county sheriff's department. Someone had sent him a message, so we came out here together. That's when we found this laboratory." Charlene and I looked at each other. Then I briefly told Joel about the confrontation with Feynman and the eventual outcome. "They were creating that much damage?" Joel asked. "Was anyone hurt?" "I don't think so," I replied. "We were lucky." "And how long ago did your friends go down there?" "Just a few minutes." He looked at both of us. "You're not going in yourselves?" I shook my head. I thought it would be better if we watched how the authorities handle all this without their knowing. Charlene's expression confirmed that she felt the same way. "Good thinking," Joel said, looking back towards the bunker site. "I think I had better get back down there, though, just so they'll know the press is aware of those 3 witnesses. How can I get in touch with you?" "We'll call you," Charlene said. He handed me a card, nodded to Charlene, and headed towards the bunker. Charlene caught my eye. He was the seventh person in the group, wasn't he? Yeah, I think so. We were silent with our thoughts for a moment. Then Charlene said, "Come on, let's try to get back to town." We'd walked for almost an hour when suddenly we heard the sound of songbirds, dozens of them somewhere to our right. Dawn was just breaking, and a cool mist rose from the forest floor. "Now what?" Charlene asked. "Look over there," I said. Through a break in the trees to the north was a huge old poplar, perhaps 8 feet in diameter. In the half-light of daybreak, the area around the tree appeared brighter somehow, as if the sun still below the horizon had been in position to burst through to radiate downward on that one spot. I experienced a sense of warmth that had grown so familiar. "What is it?" Charlene asked. "It's Will," I said. "Let's go over there." When we were within 10 feet, Will peeked around the tree, smiling broadly. He had changed. What was it? As I continued to study his body, I realized that his luminosity was the same, but he was now more clearly in focus. He hugged us both. "Were you able to see what happened?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "I was there with the soul groups. I saw everything." "You're in sharper focus. What did you do?" "It wasn't what I did," he replied. "It is what you and the group did, especially Charlene." "What do you mean?" Charlene asked. "When the 5 of you increased your energy and consciously remembered most of the world vision, you lifted this whole valley into a higher vibratory pattern. It rose closer to the vibratory level of the afterlife, which means that I now appear clearer to you as you appear clearer to me. Even the soul groups will become more readily visible in this valley now." I looked hard at Will. "Everything we've seen in this valley, everything that had happened, it's all the 10th insight, isn't it?" He nodded. "These same experiences are occurring to people all over the planet. After we grasp the first 9 insights, each of us is left at the same place, trying to live this reality day to day, in the face of what seems to be growing pessimism and divisiveness all around us. But at the same time, we are continuing to gain a greater perspective and clarity about our spiritual situation, about who we really are. We know we are awakening to a much larger plan for planet Earth. The 10th insight is about maintaining our optimism and staying awake. We're learning to better identify and believe in our own intuitions, knowing that these mental images are fleeting recollections of our original intention, of how we wanted our lives to evolve. We wanted to follow a certain path in life so that we can finally remember the truth that our life experiences are preparing us to tell and bring this knowledge into the world. We are now seeing our lives from the higher perspective of the afterlife. We know that our individual adventures are occurring within the context of the long history of human awakening. With this memory, our lives are grounded. Put into context, we can see the long process through which we have been spiritualizing the physical dimension and what we have left to do. We'll pause momentarily and move closer to us. Now we will see if enough groups like this one come together, and remember, if enough people around the world grasp the 10th. As we have seen, it is now our responsibility to keep the intention to ensure the future. The polarization of fear is still rising, and if we are to resolve it and move on, each of us must participate personally. We must watch our thoughts and expectations very carefully, and catch ourselves every time we treat another human being as an enemy. We can defend ourselves and restrain certain people, but if we dehumanize them, we add to the fear. We all are souls in growth. We all have an original intention that is positive, and we can all remember. Our responsibility is to hold that idea for everyone we meet. That's the true interpersonal ethic. That's how we uplift. That's the contagion of the new awareness that is encircling the planet. We either fear that human culture is falling apart, or we can hold the vision that we are awakening. Either way, our expectation is a prayer that goes out as a force that tends to bring about the end we envision. Each of us must consciously choose between these two futures. Will seem to drift into thought, and in the background, against the far ridge towards the south, I caught sight again of the streaks of white light. With all that was happening, I said, I never asked you about those movements of white light. Do you know what they are? Will smiled and reached out and gently touched both of our shoulders. They're the angels, he said. They respond to our faith and vision and make miracles. They seem to be a mystery even to those in the afterlife. At that moment, I was seized by a mental image of a community somewhere in a valley, much like this one. Charlene was there and others, including many children. I think we're supposed to understand the angels next, Will continued, gazing out towards the north as if seeing an image of his own. Yes, I'm sure of it. Are you two coming? I gazed at Charlene, whose look confirmed that she had seen the same vision as I. I don't think so, she said. Not right now, I added. Without speaking, Will pulled us into a brief embrace, then turned and walked away. At first I was reluctant to let him go, but I remained silent. A part of me realized the journey was far from over. Soon I knew we would see him again. Okay, take a breath. Think about the 10 insights that we've talked about so far. And this is what the world has forgotten. There was a time this was at a forefront of the world, but it's being forgotten. It's time to bring it back into the forefront of the world. The 10 insights so far. This is such a great series, and I know it's a fictional story, but it really reminds us about connecting with people, about the community, about holding the vision of what we want the world to be. And I feel like the world's forgotten. So together, maybe we can bring the world vision back into fruition. Okay, that's it from me. Don't forget to check the links down below. Check the links on my channel. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you know when the next video will be uploaded. Take care, and blessed be.